In a world overflowing with distractions, we seek meaning. How do we transform ambition into something deeper, into true fulfillment? I'm Sam Pepin, CEO of Course Educa, and I've spent years helping businesses succeed by connecting their goals to something bigger. On the Meaningful Podcast, we explore not just how to win in business, but how to grow as individuals. Through conversation with thought leaders, innovators, and everyday heroes, we uncover the stories that drive us towards something greater. Whether you're striving for success, seeking purpose, or just looking for the next steps in your journey, this podcast is your guide to navigating the intersection of ambition, growth, and meaning. So please join me and our incredible guests as we redefine what's possible in both business and life. Enjoy. Success in sales isn't about closing deals. It's about opening relationships that last. Welcome to the Meaningful Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Pepin, and today we're exploring three powerful themes: mastering the fundamentals of sales, the art of building authentic client relationship, and the mindset shifts that turn selling into helping. Our guest today is Thomas Ellis, a renowned sales strategist, coach, and author of BUD, Better, Unique, and Desirable, the sales process that gets results. As the president and chief sales coach at EWC Consultants, Thomas helped hundreds of professionals simplify their sales process, master the basics, and consistently close deals. His approach revolves around making sales a natural and consultative process rather than a pushy transaction. Whether you're a seasoned sales professional or a leader of a small business looking to grow, Thomas' insights will change the way you think about selling. If you enjoyed this discussion, please hit it well now with a like, a small review, or even a quick share. Your support helps more people find meaningful content just like this. Let's begin. Mr. Thomas Ellis, welcome on the Meaningful Podcast. How are you doing?
Sam, I am doing fantastic. How are you today?
I am doing absolutely fantastic. We're very, very happy to welcome one of the top sales coach in the nations. And to kick us off, please tell us more about EWC Consultants.
So, Sam, thank you again. EWC Consultants, we are a small sales coaching company that provides sales coaching and training to small businesses. I have adopted a process that's called BUD, Better, Unique, and Desirable. And it's a sales process that helps small business owners and small sales teams really accelerate the sales process by using some easy and simple and common sense tactics.
Beautiful. And I want to bring you back basically to your early career, obviously, in kind of like the foundations of sales. You have a quote that I absolutely adore, by the way, Thomas, which is master the basics and success will follow. You've all been a big proponent of simplicity, authenticity, and something that is just basically everybody and their mother can do it. Perhaps that seemed to be the name of the game. But I'm wondering what initially drew you to the field of sales, and perhaps how did mastering basically those fundamentals shape your career trajectory?
That is a great question. So early on as a young man in college, I started coaching younger kids in basketball. And I've always had this knack for helping others. And when you have small kids, 8, 9, 10-year-olds, trying to teach them basketball, you're really focusing on the fundamentals. And if you look at, superstars and people that practice the fundamentals, like in golf, you practice the basic fundamentals. And it's the fundamentals that keep you going when things go haywire. You just go back to the fundamentals. So I learned that early on. I was not the great superstar salesperson. I was a good salesperson, but I wasn't the star. But I always remember focusing on the basics of salesmanship, prospecting, following up, being prepared, understanding my clients' needs, just the basics. And in my book, I talk about, if you just practice and focus on mastering the fundamentals of sales, you're going to be wildly successful.
Yeah. 100%. It's very interesting to me because most sales coach and basically coaches in general started in the sports world. There seemed to be a correlation between sports and actual business. Do you see that correlation? Tell me more about what it is to teach 8, 9, 10 years old about the fundamentals of basketball compared to basically teaching professional about sales. Any parallels you can draw?
So the parallels, yes. One is that when you first started teaching somebody, a young kid, 8, 9 years old, on how to hold a basketball and drill a basketball, when you first start doing this, they look so discombobulated. They're not sure what they should do, and they give you this look like, "Why are you asking me to do this? All I want to do is shoot the ball. I don't want to
Right.
learn how to hold a ball or drill the ball." And it's the same thing when I'm coaching small business owners or sales teams. I talk about, well, how are you feeling? What's your confidence level? You know, what's your opening line? And they say, well, I don't want to learn the opening line. I want to close the deal. And I'm like, well, before you get to closing the deal, there are some fundamental things that you need to understand. Like, first of all, how do you greet me? What's the first couple of sentences how are you going to greet me? Then how are you going to learn how to listen? Because if you don't listen, you're going to sell me the wrong product and I'm going to be upset. So I always correlate, the young child was learning for the first time, and then the young professional, the business person who's learning how to sell. And it all boils down to confidence, because once you work with both of them for a period of time, they get more confident. And the more confident that you become, no matter what you do, the better you become at it.
Right. That's a very interesting point. What do you think makes somebody more confident within that process? What do you think is kind of like the confidence recipe in your words?
So the confident recipe is when you coach them or train them on something and they see it work, right? So when I'm coaching a client and I say, listen, how are we going to talk to this customer, right? What our opening lines, and we'll practice the opening lines, right? And then how are we going to uncover what their needs are? If you ask some specific questions, the customer begins to tell you what their problems are, what they want to fix, and you're just asking more questions. And then the light bulb goes off because you get another meeting. So you did something right to get another meeting.
Right.
Then when you come back for the next meeting, you present the solution, and they nod and say, that's exactly what I need. And then they say, well, how much? And you close that deal, and that's a high. I mean, you get really excited, and you do that once or twice, and then you begin to get confidence. And nothing can stop somebody who has confidence.
Yeah, exactly. One thing that I love is confidence is competence and results, right? So you get to a point where you believe in yourself, and therefore you become basically more convinced that this can work, and that helps improve your sales dramatically. I'm wondering in that transition of establishing basically EWC Consultants, it's how did you come to start it, and perhaps what was the gap in the market that you saw and you were aiming to address at the beginning?
That is another great question. So I was a director of sales for a large telecom company, and I built this organization from the ground up. At the height of my employment there, I had 6 sales managers and 60 sales reps, and we did about $80 million in revenue. And I built that from the ground up. Throughout this process, I hired everybody. I interviewed everybody, even people that didn't work for me. So the sales manager would interview their sales reps, but nobody came to my organization unless I interviewed them, because I was building a certain type of culture. And throughout this process of like 15 years, I realized that, you know what, I really love helping people be successful. And I used to watch these young reps come into the organization and watch them from a distance, watch them grow, and more importantly, watch their lifestyles change because they started making money and they're buying houses and doing all kind of things. And I watched them go from a new novice salesperson to an experienced salesperson making lots of money that's still willing to learn. So after I left that organization, which got bought out by another company, and I received a buyout package, and I said, well, now I can really go out and do what I love doing, and that's helping others. And more importantly, what I really liked was working with small business owners that have expertise in everything other than sales. Either they're operations person, a financial person, IT, whatever that was, but now they have their own company and they have to go out and sell and find new customers. And where I live in Washington, D.C. area, there aren't many people that are doing what I do, working with small businesses, helping them to do this. So I volunteer at a couple of organizations, one being the Small Business Development Center, where every month I do a webinar or coaching session on a sales process, the sales process. And I do this because those small business owners are great at what they do, but they don't have the confidence to go out and tell somebody how and why they should buy their product. They assume because of their environment that all I have to do, Thomas, is show up, show them my product or service, and they're going to buy.
Right. And this is, and you're right. And I think that we live in such a competitive market now that sales is truly the edge. Finding a winning product is one thing, and obviously is the first step to anything, winning product or a service. But then how you come to basically differentiate yourself towards this understanding that, again, and we'll talk to you about your BUD methodology because that will serve us as a platform moving forward. But it's truly amazing to me how I saw that in my own career, right? As a salesperson myself, ever since I was 17 years old, what I found is the more convinced I was about my own services and my own ability to deliver, the better basically the conversion rate was, because the human beings can feel this. We all have an aura, and when your aura is clear and is moral and it's confidence, people are just very, very much they're brought through this understanding that you can help them, and that makes basically these sales much easier. And I'm wondering, when you obviously were developing the BOD methodology, was that after you basically exited your full-time basically business that you built from the ground up, or tell me more about the timeline there?
So that was interesting because I was teaching and coaching this process before I started my own business, because I've been involved, I've sat in so many training classes throughout my sales career, different sales programs and processes. And I kind of like took all of those, and I wanted something that was easy and simple to do. What I found is that when we teach somebody something that is complex and complicated, and we use all these fancy big words and acronyms, and we spend a day in a classroom learning this, we don't know what to do next, right? Because there's so much information, there's so many buzzwords, it's so complicated. And I'm like, no, sales is not complicated. And so I realized early on that sales, and at the end of the day, it is a bunch of conversations with the same person over a period of time. That's all it is. The more conversations you and I have, the more I understand what your problems are, the more I understand what are the important problems that you want to fix now. And notice I said now, the urgency. What is the urgency to fix this problem? I need to find out what problems you have that you want to fix now. And then if I've been listening to you, I come back to you with a solution that you go, wow, this is exactly what I think will work. And I give you the right price. So I solve the problem. You obviously love me, right? Because I'm passionate about what I'm doing. I understand your problems. I give you a solution and the pricing is right. The natural next step is to do business. It's natural. We shouldn't force anybody to buy anything. I tell people all the time, I haven't sold anybody anything in a million years. The thing that I do is that I help people buy, and I help to make decisions in my favor.
Yes, you help them buy. Basically, you make them take the decisions of buying instead of forcing it. And that makes a lot of sense. And I'm wondering, you keep referring to, and the pricing is right, which is a big component. You work with a lot of small business owners. What's typically the winning formula for basically having a great pricing model that makes sense to not only yourself, obviously you have some margins embedded to it, but also makes sense to the ideal client profile that you're trying to reach? Is there anything that is there any tips you have for that?
So the first tip I have is that you should do some research on what other companies are price range is for your products. Okay. And you use it as a guide. Okay. And then you take a look at what your costs are. Okay. What are your costs to produce this service or product to deliver it? And the third thing you really need to think about is, who is your audience? Is this a Fortune 500 company, or is this a 10-person company? And we need to understand what the small company can afford. What's affordable to their company? And that happens that's trial and error. I'm constantly evaluating my pricing strategy to make sure that it's aligned with my audience. So now that's a constant thing, but you need to first identify who your audience is and what is their ability and availability to spend that money with you.
Yes, and it's in affordability. One thing that I think everybody can take some great insight from is the research part. As business owners, there's always this idea of obviously having many hats, right? So you're basically having many hats because you're at the beginning of funding something that can be quite fantastic. It's really the epitome of turning nothing to something is entrepreneurships. But within that process, one thing that is extremely valuable and definitely worth your time is research. We typically go over it because we want to go quickly, right? We just want to, like you said, the kid just want to shoot the basketball. All right? They don't want to learn how to handle, to give basically a decisive pass. They want to shoot the goddamn thing. And that's great. But obviously, as we know in entrepreneurship and in anything in life, if the basics are not covered, if the research is not done, you don't have the ability basically to make conscious decisions. When you're analyzing basically somebody's business, and especially a small business, what's typically the best resources that you utilize to do that research? To use online forums? Is there basically any platforms you prefer to do that research? Tell me more about your methodology there.
Well, AI has become a very important tool. Okay. So before that, I used to have clients, and for my own business, I used to talk to a lot of other sales coaches, and we used to talk and share information, price things, especially when I got started early. I asked them, so if you're doing this, what do you charge, and what's this? And I just keep a notebook on that stuff. And then I began to give that pricing to potential new clients. Now, that was great. But now when you have AI, okay, you can put together a proposal and say, this proposal is for X amount of hours or a workshop for this many amount of people. Tell me what would be a good price range for this service.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And AI will give you a price range. And then you use that to say, okay, and then you can ask it more questions, right? So if the company that I'm calling on is a $5 million company, what would be a good price budget for them, right? And so, and then you begin to really understand what your pricing model should look like. And it's a range, right, of what companies will be willing to pay. But then I go back to, if you're solving the big issue with this particular company, big issues equals big pay, right? So if I'm solving a big problem that you have, for example, if I come back to you and say, for me to do this 5-day workshop, is going to be $10,000. And they go, and if I only have found one problem, right, that one problem doesn't equal $10,000. Okay. But if I find 4 problems that I can solve, right, so now it's $2,500 per problem solved, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're more apt to go, Thomas, that makes sense, right? Because I've broken down the total value to what problems I'm solving. And $2,500 a problem fixed is not a big deal. So you have to be very careful and mindful of your target audience.
Makes sense. And basically within the budget strategy, I'd love to go pillar by pillar, so that everybody can be on the same page. So obviously B is better. How do you quantify better? What's your process basically to outline the better section?
So the better section and all of this stuff, Sam, is pretty simple. It's not this, I do a workshop called It's Sales, Not Rocket Science.
Right.
And people, no, sales is not rocket science. The better part of the process is I am going to be more prepared than anybody else that you talk to. Okay. I'm going to be more prepared. I'm going to do my homework. Okay. I'm going to be better because I'm going to show up on time. I'm going to do what I say I'm going to actually do. Okay. And I have your best interests at heart. That's the better part. The unique part is I'm going to do things that most people that you talk to that are trying to sell your product service do not do. Number one, I'm going to listen to what your problems are. Okay, I'm going to listen intently. I'm going to listen. And I'm going to ask you some questions to find out what is the biggest problem that you have that you need to solve in the next 6 to 12 months. Okay? And then I'm going to, during our process of getting to know each other, I'm going to share information with you about other companies that I've helped and share information with you on some research I found pertaining to the problem that you have that I didn't write. Not my stuff, but I found an article on how to hire the best salesperson if you're hiring somebody. And so that's the unique part, okay? And I'm going to be authentic, right? This is who I am. This is who I'm going to be from the first meeting all the way through. Now, the other thing that's important there is that the way you start that relationship is the way you have to keep the relationship going, right?
Mm.
So if you start out being very attentive and responding to the emails and calls like within a couple hours, okay, you have to continue that, okay, right? Because people love consistency, right? We love people that are consistent. So I'm making that impression from the very first time you and I talk, the very first time. And every time you and I talk, I'm hopefully leaving you with the thought of, wow, Thomas is great. I have to find a way to work with Thomas, right? And that's the desirable part, right? Because we all want to work with somebody that is desirable. Desirable, okay? They do what they say they're gonna do. They care about me, okay? They're always thinking about ways that they can help me. It's not about me, okay? It's about them. And being on time, presenting when you're supposed to present, doing all these things, right? When you think of somebody that's desirable, Sam, what do you think about?
When I think of desirable, well, it's a very interesting question. The first thing I think in desirable is it fits what I was anticipating basically to get out of these relationships, right? So if there's XYZ problems, I come to Thomas to solve it. My expectation is that I will basically exchange a monetary amount, which is my resources, in exchange for his resources, which is service. If that value exchange is fair and we both leave this relationship, or at least contemplate and have an ongoing relationships where my problem continues to be solved, you're going to be basically getting a resource from me which you're happy with. That's a winning relationships. I was reading The Value of Other by Orion Taraban, which is a psychologist out of Napa, California. Lovely gentleman. And he was talking about this idea that any relationship needs a value exchange. And when you say those words out loud, some people say, well, Sam, you know what? Why you're treating basically relationship as economics? And that's not what I'm telling you to do. What I'm telling you to do, though, is understand that anywhere you go at any time, in any relation you're trying to entertain, they will need an exchange of value. If there is no exchange of value, there's no relationship, and therefore you will fail into basically realizing what you're trying to get with this person. So that's the first thing that is desirable. Let's keep the value exchange solid and that makes it on both sides. That way we keep repeating it and we keep entertaining it. That's the first thing. The second thing, which I think you said beautifully, is consistency. And consistency, we've been reading basically poems and philosophers since the beginning of time. It's one of the hardest thing there is. Consistency is very easy to say, extremely hard to execute. Obviously, consistency is the hobgoblin of the little minds, because we as human beings are very, very wired to basically be people of narrow focus. So I do something right now, I get it done, fantastic. I get away basically with other things. But the true champions, and you know this, you've been in sports and you've been basically with hundreds of sales coach, people who succeed the most are the one that understand that what they're doing right now as we speak will need to be done tomorrow, the day afterwards, the day afterwards. Look at all the interviews of any sports champions. What did they say? They're the first one to come in for practice. They're the last one to leave, right? They practice more and they practice with such an urgency for success, a focus for success, that's what builds a person that is necessary and desirable for that success to emerge. So those are the main two components of what I consider desirable. And you say this quite beautifully within your book. Also, you obviously, Bud is a book, Better, Unique, and Desirable. And what I found in business is distilling basically complex strategies and into actionable insights, pardon me, is that's what creates an extraordinary impact. Because you said it best. You can go into those mumbo jumbo words and think you sound very smart, but nobody understands you, and therefore no impact is getting created. So I'm wondering, when you were writing this book, as obviously as you as a person, you're obviously verbally very, very astute, very, very skilled. Was it hard for you to put these lessons that you were basically saying orally for so long into writing forms? Tell me more about that, how it was to basically change communication media.
Yeah, that was interesting because I'm an orator by trade. Writing is not something that I love. Um, but years before I wrote the book, I had all this content and information and everything, and I was trying to figure out, how do I take what's in my brain and put it on paper that's makes sense and that's easy to read, right? And that was my challenge that I had. And I had help in figuring that out. But the thing that I really, really kept coming back to was the mission for me writing this book was to take a process that many people think is complicated and make it very simple and easy to repeat. So like you talked about earlier, you have to do the same thing every day. You have to be consistent with that, right? You have to, I mean, if you're trying to find new clients, where you find them at? You go to networking events, you go to LinkedIn, and each one of those mediums, there's a way that you handle that. There's a way that you work a networking event. There's a strategy there, right?
Right.
So, and then when you're on LinkedIn, there's a strategy there. Okay, so just those two mediums by themselves, if those two are done properly, then you begin to have great conversations with people. You know, the early part of the sales process is I need to talk to some people. I need to have conversations. And those two ways help you have those conversations, which you build upon. So that's easy, right? So the easy part is I need to go out and meet people. The hard part is, what do I say to these people? How do I interact? More importantly, how do I follow up? Because as you and I know, the secret sauce is in the follow up, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's no use of you going to a networking event and gathering 20 cards and letting them sit for 3 weeks. You've wasted that networking time. So one of the strategies that I teach people, you know, early on, because nobody likes to go networking. It's hard, it's time consuming, it's done in the evening. You rather be home doing, you know. So I come up with this process that says, hey, your goal in networking is very simple. At whenever you complete this task, you can go home. And the task is find 3 people that you've had a conversation with that both of you agree to have a follow-up call, right? And if you get there at 7 o'clock and you get this done by 7:30, you can go home. Your task is done, right? So
Love that.
whenever I talk to people about this, the light bulb goes off and say, oh my God, that's my goal. So every time you go networking, you want to leave out of there with 3 people that you want to follow up with. And then follow up the next day or that evening. Follow up note. Hey, nice meeting you. Per our conversation, we agreed that we would have a chat. These are the dates and time I'm available. Or look at my calendar invite for times that fit yours. And be done with it.
Right. And let me actually, that's a very interesting conversation. Let me go deeper with you on this. So we all know, because of obviously of stats and people telling us about it, but referrals and networking is about 72% of all business being generated in the small business world. Very high percentage. But one thing that I see, and I do a lot of networking, and now I have a team of people doing that for me, and that's another conversations. But for those actively engaging basically within networking, one thing that I always found as an issue is they don't have an objective, right? They're in the room, they're trying to have conversation. I'm not saying that they don't try, but they don't have a firm goal in mind, and therefore they don't know how much basically time they should spend there. They don't know basically who to interact with. They don't know if it's even worth their time to be there in the first place. So I'm wondering, because obviously you're one of the best sales coaches in the nations, when you are working with people, or even for yourself, how do you identify a networking event that is most likely, nothing is guaranteed in life, but is most likely to fit your ideal customer avatar and fit that objective that you set, which is to have 3 quality follow-up calls with them? Do you have a kind of like a methodology or some basically insights concerning how to choose one?
Yeah, so you want to look at, first of all, before you need to know who your ideal client is, right? Right. So we'll assume that we know
Yes.
that, right? We assume that we know who our ideal client is. So if you're selling construction services, right? Then you want to go to networking events where construction companies are, right? Pretty simple stuff here. This is not, don't make this thing more complicated. It's simple. Look at the product that you sell and then think about the people who use their product and services and identify events where they are going to be. So if you are a CPA, if you sell some new fancy CPA service, right, that's going to help CPAs do their jobs faster, better, taxes on 9 yards, then you want to go to CPA-led events, right? Is there a CPA association in your area, right? Is there, and find out where they are. So, and if you're selling human resources services like training, right? If you're selling training programs on development and anger management and all those things there, and your target audience is human resources, the directors, then most places have a human resources association, right? So that's where you go. Okay, so we really need to hone in on who our product serves and where those people hang out at, and that will determine where you go. It could be the local Chamber of Commerce. If you look at the Chamber of Commerce list of members and you find, wow, my ideal clients go here, maybe I ought to go and check it out.
Interesting. In keeping it simple, obviously make this much more consistent, but also you have a much clearer basically desire to do it because now you have a plan, right? Any a dream with a plan and focus can become reality. Without a plan without a plan or focus or either of those, it just basically will keep being a dream. And you obviously coach hundreds of professional and across various industries as well, which is something that I want to talk to you about. And to me, every single great coach that I had always told me the true measure of a coach lies in the success of those they mentor, right? Your success is their success. I was always wondering, because you work with such a big variety of people, how do you tailor your coaching strategies for professional across different industry? Is it always similar? How do you basically make sure that you tailor it in a way that you speak their languages? What's your process there?
So, and that is a great question because people say, well, what industries do you focus on? I'm saying at the end of the day, the sales process doesn't change if I'm selling medical products, toilet paper, paintbrushes, right? Or antibiotics to the local doctor's offices, okay? Basically doesn't change. Now, there's some nuances in each one of those, but at the end of the day, I have to generate interest, right? I got to generate interest. I got to get this person excited to want to meet with me, right? So in order for me to do that, I have to understand what challenges that they have that I can fix, okay? I have to understand the industry and where the industry's going. And that applies to every industry. Now, when we get down to the soups and nuts, each one of those may have a different sales cycle, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and it boils down to how many people are involved in this decision and how much does it cost? So obviously, the more people involved in making the decision is going to take a longer than if it was just one person, and the amount of money it is, right? So if I'm selling something for $500, right, I should be able to close that in 2 weeks, example, right? If I'm closing something for $10,000, that may be 6-8 weeks. If I'm closing something for $100,000, well, that may be 6 months, right? Because $100,000 deal means there's going to be a lot of people involved. So I need to find, right? So the process doesn't change with the the industry, there may be some nuances that change. But at the end of the day, I have to do this. I have to really understand what they need. I have to get their attention. I have to have that initial meeting. I have to ask those questions. I got to figure out what solutions, what problems they want to fix now. I have to present my solution, and then I got to ask for the business. That doesn't change no matter what you sell.
Absolutely. The methodology basically and the values behind it is always the same. And obviously as part of the process of working with different people, then you adjust it depending on timeline and obviously what are you selling. That's very clever. And I one thing that was that's how I discovered you actually. I was working with AI and I was because we have a growing sales team at Core Centrica, and I think it was the first meeting that we had together. You actually told me that, and I was basically saying, hey, who's the best basically sales coach in the nation? And they would give me a few names, and then the 10th person that they named was Thomas Ellis. So I was like, hey, this is interesting. So I went into more details into it, and obviously we see this flake of honor that you have behind you, and it must be a great feeling, right? Obviously, as somebody that was now spent decades within this industry, that's again showing just how important consistent is. Coming back to that consistency, basically terms, but. How did that make you feel when you were basically named among the top 10 basically sales coaches in the world? And how did that impact your visions? Now that you're on the other end, you're not starting everything. You did that very successfully. You're not the other way around, which is people now ask you about how they can be successful, and it must be very novel. Tell me more about how you felt when you received that news.
Well, when I received that news, first of all, people who know me know I'm a pretty humble guy, pretty low key. That even if I didn't win the award, I have so many people that I've helped, that I see and talk to, that'll write me email in how and then or comment on LinkedIn saying, hey, this guy helped me do X, Y, Z. He helped me do this. I have over 100 recommendations on LinkedIn. This award just said, hey, people recognize what you do, and more importantly, they appreciate it, right?
Sure.
And so I didn't do, like I told people, I would do this for free because of the passion I have for sharing my God-given skills and talents, and being able to transfer that to people who can grasp it and learn from it in a manner that they go, Thomas, people would tell me that you make sales seem so easy. You make sales seem like this is something that I can do. You make sales, I can really feel, because of your coaching or a workshop I went to, I have a different perspective on sales. And that's because of you. So, I'm humbled, but there's more work to be done.
I love this. In something that you said there is actually quite clever. You said, well, you made them realize basically that they can do it. That's something very, very precious. That's something that must felt very good. Why do you think, in your opinion, basically, when people are approaching you to get better at sales, what is typically what's the first basically roadblock that they face where they cannot imagine themselves as salespeople? I get this very often, right? And even people saying it out loud, oh no, I'm not a salesperson. There's some type of the reputation of what is a salesman and their value basically is very, very debated. I'll go as far as it is very, very taboo. You're always thinking about this very salesy car guy trying to just basically come to you over and over and over for buying that car. But you make sales, and I'm a big believer that we're all salespeople, even though you might not think so, just the way it is. That's just, if you are in business, you must be a salesperson. Is that does it start with the psychology behind it, what it means basically for them to realize that actually being a salesperson is great and it's novel, and if you're doing it with morality, it's actually something fantastic that you should be proud of? Does that start with psychology first and then working on the skills, or how did typically, what's the first roadblock that you see as the biggest problem?
That is a great question because I get that all the time. One of the chapters in my book talk about mindset, okay? And it's the mindset. It's the psychology. I tell people sales is psychological. It's psychological. So I would always tell people, I'm doing a workshop with the audience, and I go, okay, how many of you are in sales? I get very few people that are raised their hand. I say, okay, how many of you have children? They all raise their hand. I said, guess what happens every day in your household? You're selling, right? You're selling your son or daughter on what? Things you want them to do, things you want them not to do. They're negotiating with you, Mom, and they say, well, Mom, can I come home at 10 o'clock instead of 9 o'clock? Those are negotiations, right? So when you realize and I think about that, and then as I'm talking about it, I can see people's eyes like light up. I said, you're selling, right? So if you're married, if you're in a relationship, you're selling and negotiating all the time. We just do it, right? But more importantly, when you think about that, that's the same thing that you're going to be doing in the real world. It's the same thing, okay? The other thing I talked about immediately is that I used the car salesperson. So I said, most people's first experience with a salesperson is either the door-to-door vacuum cleaner person, right? Or when they go by their car. And let me explain to you why the car salesmen act the way that they act, okay? Because data tells them that if you leave that showroom without buying that car, the chance of you coming back is less than 10%. Now, they have a mortgage at home just like you. They got family that's going to school just like you. That's why they lock their door and have to use these tactics, right? It's because of the data says this is how it works. So they can't let you go because they got a family at home they're trying to feed just like you. Don't get mad at them. That's their environment. Now, that is a small percentage of all salespeople nationwide. Most salespeople are very consultative in nature, okay? They're here to consult you, not to sell you, okay? And the other thing that I want to leave you with is this. Whenever you think about sales, right, remove the word sales and put in the word help, right? Because all I ever do, I haven't sold anybody anything. All I do is help people. So if you're selling a product or service, your product helps people do what? What does it help them do? And if you are able to help them solve enough problems that they can see, you're going to do business, right? It's natural. I have a problem. You have something that can fix that problem. If the price is right, we're going to do business. Nothing complicated about that. So whenever I tell people to remove the word sales and put in help, it's like the room gets brighter.
Everybody wants to help.
Oh, I never thought about that. Well, what are we doing when we sell somebody something? We're helping them. Right. So put in the word help, and that'll guide you through the process.
Yes, and it's very interesting that you mentioned this because I don't remember who said this, but he said your bank account, the money that you're able to earn is a direct correlation of how many people you're able to help. Like you said, the bigger the problem, the bigger the payouts. So the more valuable you are to the marketplace, the more resources you get to basically take out of the marketplace. It's a very, very simple formula. In capitalism, like it or hate it, is still the most sustainable way, basically, to reward people for their efforts and their actions. When you're thinking about this mindset shift, and I see that with, and this is something else that I wanted to wrestle with you on. is that when I was starting back in 2021, I thought that the people struggling with sales were the juniors, right? The novice. They need to learn it, and afterwards, it's done for life. You understand the basics. You're just trying to better yourself. But then the more networking event that I was going to, the more conversation that I was having, the more I saw that, no, there's some people that are 50, 60, and still have a very big time selling. How important it is to start as young as possible to train your mindset and to train yourself on sales, which is a key pillar, like you said, of any relationship there is. And how can we emphasize that enough so that people can start to do them on their own as a true self-improvement tool instead of this very, very taboo, oh, well, I'll train myself on sales. I'm not a salesperson.
Right. So first of all, you need a community of like-minded people that will help and encourage you. Right. So that's key. The other thing is that this sales thing that people talk about all the time, it's an ongoing learning, right? I'm still learning things, and I've been in sales over 40 years. I'm still fine-tuning and learning things as I move forward because the world changes. The way people buy changes, right? Back in the years ago when you would have an appointment with a company, they didn't know anything about the company or the product. You were the source of that information.
Right.
Right? Now, before people meet you, they know about the company, the services, how many people love the services, how many people hate the services, okay? So when you meet you don't have to talk about the company. They know that. So that changes your strategy, right? Because early on, we used to have to spend some time talking about the company and the products. We spend a good time. Now, we don't have to do that. So the sales process kind of evolves, okay? And if we don't evolve with it, then we're going to be lost because now we have AI tools that can do a lot of the stuff that we would normally have to take time researching and learning about as a buyer, that now this stuff is all there. So the process changes, how we engage people. We have a tool like LinkedIn, which is an engagement tool, right? And so you're constantly sharing information and content, educating your target audience. So when your target audience sees what you do, after a while, at some point in time, you have a conversation with them. They know what you do. Yeah, Thomas, I know you help salespeople, small business grow. How can you help me? Right? Here's my problem. How can you help me? So I don't have to tell them all this stuff I do. They know. Their question is, how can you help me and how much does it cost? The world has changed.
The world indeed is changing, but the methodology of sales are not changing, which is very interesting. The exact same values and methodology apply to a different world and a different process, different timeline. And I'm wondering, obviously, when you're thinking about your sales philosophy and how it differs from traditional approach. But perhaps I think the better way to look at it is how it solidifies traditional approach. You don't strike me as somebody that has an adversary type of process compared to most salespeople. It's more of a way to enlighten them about just how important the basics are. Yes, think about all these fancy things that may improve you by 1-2% and your tone of voice and so on. But most importantly, do buds and the rest will follow. I'm wondering though, because of that, basically the world is changing so much. Have you seen basically any barriers to entry, or perhaps any people coming back to you with some type of reluctance because you emphasize the basics so much, and we are consistently basically being over basically whelmed with different informations and use this very, very fancy tools and this very, very fancy course? Have you seen that as a big rebuttal from time to time?
Well, there is a lot of noise out there, and there will always be noise. AI has really taken people to think that, well, we don't need salespeople anymore. We have AI. We got all these tools. And for those people, I say, well, sales will always be a human to human interaction, always, right? Unless, depending on the products that you sell. Well, if you're selling consumer products and stuff like that, maybe not. But when you're selling sophisticated kind of software problems and software products and services or any other type of service, human to human interaction is still going to be, at the end of the day, what kills that deal. Tell people all the time, you can email me people 100 times, you could send proposals, but no deal gets done until two people have a conversation. It doesn't get done, okay? And so as we evolve and people go, oh, but there's this new tool, great. Tools are there to enhance your preparation. Think about all the tools that are available now. There are tools out there that you can say, I'm calling on Dr. Jones. He's a cardiologist. What are the top 10 questions that I should be asking him? And AI would tell you, right? But you got to figure out in what cadence should you ask those questions, right? Do I ask all of them? What's my cadence, right? To that, but we'll have the information. So we're going to have to figure out, because right now, we are an information overload, right? Overload of information. You want to learn anything, man, you can get it anywhere. But what are we doing with that information when we're talking to our client or prospect that makes it easy and simple for them to make a decision? That's my big thing, right? Because if you give people too many options, they make no decision.
Right.
Right? You paralyze them because you're going to call them and say, so Sam, had you made a decision on the proposals I sent you? Well, Thomas, I'm still thinking about those 4 options that you gave me. See, that's my fault, right? Because I gave you too many options. And now you can't make a decision, right?
Absolutely. And this is so important within the sales process to be concise and to guide them towards what you know is best for them. That's another thing. You are the professional, you're the service provider. So make sure basically you held their hands all the way that is necessary. Some people are more hands-on, others are more hands-off, and you need to obviously categorize those as a salesperson, but take their hand, lead them to promised lines of, hey, this is the solution. Package number 2, I think it's perfect for you. You don't need package number 3 as well right now. Let's start this relationship. Let's have you on board. When everything works well, why not basically build on top of it? And that's also very key. And always remember that you need to master the tools, not let the tools master you. Like you said, a lot of people basically now are getting worried, well, will AI replace my job and so on? Well, it's possible. And we've been seeing basically this evolution across all human basically time. There's old job that disappear, new job that appears. But one thing that is certain is somebody using cutting edge tools with the same skill sets and the personality that is very similar of basically what I call moral substance compared to one that doesn't. You will get basically out-compete. There's no doubt about that. So learn that. That's very important. And just to finish us off, basically, Thomas, one thing I would love to talk to you is kind of like your future plans and how they see evolutions of sales strategies unfolding upon you. As we're seeing basically technology and customer expectations also rise with time, what trends are you more excited about, and how are you preparing basically for this very, very quickly evolving future?
So, great question. As I think about what's going on in this evolution of AI and it's going to help everybody, we need to be careful and thoughtful of thinking about, as I said earlier, tools are going to be there to help you get better prepared to service your customers. At the end of the day, this sales or client acquisition it's still going to be a human-to-human interaction. So be careful with the tools that you use. And before you start using tools, what do you, first of all, figure out what do you want the tools to do?
Mm-hmm.
And then find the tools that do that. Because, oh my God, there's new AI tools popping up every single day. So find out what do you want to do with a tool and how it's going to benefit your company. Benefit meaning, how can I get the information faster, quicker, so I can adopt it into my sales strategy or engineering strategy or manufacturing strategy or financial strategy, whatever it is, because there's a tool for each one of those disciplines that's going to help you do your job better. And the more that you set customer expectations, okay, the more that the customer is going to be satisfied. There have been people that I have worked with and coached that I've figured out, and I've told them, I said, this business owner thing is not for you, okay? Because they don't like being out in the public, right? They don't like talking to people. And I'm like, I'm sorry, but you're running you are the small business. You are the person that's got to do this. If you can't do this, then this is not what you want to do, because it's going to be frustrating and painful for you. And at the end of the day, you're going to fail because you have to have certain things. You have to want to be like talking to people. That's part of being a business owner because you can't hire a salesperson today, right? You don't have the funds. So I've had a few of those conversations with some people, and I owe it to them to always be truthful and honest with the people I talk with.
Beautiful. Failing to plan is planning to fail. Mr. Thomas Ellis, thank you so much for being on the Meaningful Podcast. It was incredible to go through your journey and some of your best insights. And I would absolutely adore if you can leave us with some words of wisdom.
So there are many, many, many words of wisdom, but I'll leave you with a couple. Number one, find a community that will encourage and coach you, okay? That'll be the first thing. The second thing is surround yourself with people that genuinely want to help you be successful. Number three, be consistent and be pleasantly persistent. And those are my three nuggets that I'm going to leave with you, Sam. It's been an absolute blast talking with you. I'm hoping that if anybody wants to have further conversations with me, Sam will provide you with my information. I'm here to help you achieve the goals that you desire.
Thank you for spending your time with us today on the Meaningful Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review or share it with someone who could benefit from it. And always remember, your story matters. Make it meaningful. We hope to see you next time.